Hey guys, welcome back to another 3D printing video, and today we have the longer LK5 Pro. So I reviewed quite a few longer machines in the past. I think everything ranging from LK1 to 4, and I had pretty good experience with those, so I'm pretty excited to see what the LK5 Pro here has to offer. So in this video we're going to unbox it, set it up, and do some prints. Alright, so let's get started. Alright, so the LK5 Pro comes in this box. It's not very tall, but it is quite large in every other dimension. So keep that in mind, and also it weighs, quite a bit too. Alright, so here we are looking at the top, and we're doing a little bit something new, filming from the top down, so we'll see how that works out. Let's go ahead and open it up. Alright, well, it looks like we have orange foam, and I've never seen it this color. That's quite interesting. So it's still the soft foam, but it's in this orange color. Very different for sure. So at the very top we can see that everything is organized quite nice. Even though it does look like somewhat put together, there's going to be some assembly required. Let's see what's included here. So we get a little sample of PLA filament in a roll, very small amount, a micro SD card with a USB adapter, an end stop switch. Well, this little baggie says spare parts, and it looks like some kind of micro switch of some sort. A spatula, and it's not sharpened, but I don't think you want sharpened on this kind of bed that's included here. And for that matter, I don't think you want to use this at all. So here we have a thank you letter from the company, the instruction manual or quick start guide. Here it kind of shows us how to build the printer step by step, also how to use it here on the bottom. So yeah, pretty nice presentation overall, simple but to the point. So there are only 6 steps, so this shouldn't be too hard, I don't think. So let's go ahead and pull out some of these frame parts. So this is the gantry, and it is somewhat pre-assembled. And look at that, we have these smooth finishes on one of the sides. That's a nice touch. And it looks like there's some kind of brackets already installed here at the end. So over here we have some kind of rods. Actually, they're really lightweight rods. And they kind of look like bracing rods of some sort. And there are 2 of them. And here we have the lead screw, which we'll have to unwrap and install. All right, so it looks like the bed is connected already to the base. So let's go ahead and pull up this first layer. And here we can see the rest of the printer, and it looks like the whole base is already pre-assembled and the bed connected and everything. So this is a pretty nice way to present the printer, which you do have to do some assembly, but not something crazy where it'll take you hours and hours. So, and I just love how they packed everything. Everything seems to be very well thought through. So it looks like we have a few parts here and there. A bracket for the top of the Z-axis with a bearing. The Z-axis stepper motor with the coupler already connected to it. It looks like they are using their own branded motors. A set of Allen wrenches. An open-ended wrench for adjusting rollers, and it looks like some hardware, and the good part is it's all labeled. That's nicely organized there. And also we do get some zip ties. And over here looks like we have the power cord to the printer. All right, so it looks like that the main base here needs to come out next. I'm gonna go ahead and pull it up. This thing is quite large and has a really good weight to it. So I just realized that the bed wasn't even connected, and it is glass, and it's the perforated kind, looks like, which is really nice. So hopefully this works out really good. But yeah, this is a pretty large size printer, and let's flip it around. And we can see it's kind of like an open design. The power supplies out here, and then all of our electronics are in here. And they are using 6 rollers there on the bed to write on the channel. So it looks like that the base is tethered with the X-axis assembly here. And so this part is pretty much pre-assembled also. We'll just have to roll it onto the upper portion of the frame. All right. So yeah, and that looks like it's almost everything. There's something right here. Okay, there's more stuff. So we got the spool holder, and it is quite thin and lightweight, and it is metal, but yeah, it looks like it'll do the job. And here looks like we have something quite heavy actually, and it appears to be like the screen, but yeah, it's completely encased in metal, so very nice and rugged design. And there is a sticker here that asks to check for the power supply voltage, so we definitely need to do that. But yeah, that looks like everything, and I have to say they did an excellent job in packing this thing, and we got even hard corners on each corner, so it's very well protected. And I guess some bonus points for this interesting new orange color. All right, so before we do anything, let's go ahead and see if we can maybe pull this cover off, and we'll check out the electronics inside. But I did want to mention that it does have feet, but they're plastic on the 4 corners. So that makes it, you know, easy where you can move the printer around, slide it around, but maybe not so good for noise dampening. Also, the power supply here, it looks like a generic 360 watts. It's the thicker one. I'm gonna go ahead and take all these little bolts out, and we'll see what's inside. All right, so I got all the little bolts out, and it looks like it does just come off. So let's take a closer look at the board here. So there's the model name, kind of LGT kit version 1.0. Here we can see that we have removable steppers. You can pull one out. And if I can make it out, it's a TWC2208. So I think these are the silent steppers. And they are heatsink, so yeah, really nice. And it does say version 2.0 on there. And that's the processor. I think it's a 32-bit. So it appears that the extruder doesn't get the same stepper driver. I just noticed that. I guess it's a regular one. Technically shouldn't be a big deal, but you know, those retractions might be heard a lot easier. So, but yeah, wiring seems to be well organized and everything is really nice and clean. This is where our power socket is. And while we're looking over here at the power supply, let's go ahead and check what our voltage is set to. So you guys can see that mine is set to 230 and I need 115. But in any case, you just need to change it to your voltage. Check it, make sure it's correct. And while we're looking at the bottom side, I wanted to show you guys the rollers here. And it looks like on this printer here, they are a little bit loose, so we'll have to adjust it. So we have 6 rollers total. We got 3 stationary and then 3 adjustable. And so there's an eccentric nut underneath that this included wrench fits in. And you can adjust them closer or farther from the channel. And so it's usually a better idea to adjust them while the printer is right side up, because we're right now upside down, so we have a lot of weight on the bed. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the cover back on, and we'll flip it around and adjust the bed. All right, so I got the printer right side up again, and it is quite loose. So if you move it side to side or anywhere and it, you know, bounces, that means it's too loose. Now, even if yours doesn't bounce, you probably want to go ahead and check it anyways, because these rollers here, you know, if they're over tightened, they can really mess themselves up, because this is the y-axis. He's going to move around a lot back and forth. But the best way to do this is, I don't know if you guys can see, but I'm going to put my hand on the other side of the bed and I'm just going to push it against it this way. That way I can feel how tight the rollers are. And we're just going to spin the roller and feel like in one spot, like a little burnout. Then the middle, okay, the middle is completely loose, and this one is kind of loose. So both of these outer ones are kind of loose, and the middle one's completely loose. So I'm just gonna go from one end to the other. So I'm gonna start with this side, grab my wrench, and I'm gonna tighten it just a little bit until I get a nice drag. Okay, so I got a nicer drag now. Let's go ahead and go to our middle roller, and we're gonna tighten it up just enough until the roller starts touching the rail and has like a friction on it. I think our first one needs to go a little more. All right, middle one can probably go just a tiny bit more. All right, so our first one and the middle one is feeling really good. So technically our bed should not be wobbling or moving, and it's not. And to solidify everything and make it more stable, the third one here is gonna help us. And it's completely loose right now. And we're gonna tighten it up until we get some friction. So now we're gonna check each one again. And all of them feel really good. So you just want a slight drag. And plus, if they're too tight, you might have unsmooth travel in the bed. So now we can move it around and it feels really smooth. And what you want is really smooth action. If you feel any kind of bumps or anything funny, your roller might be too tight. All right, so the first step looks like we need to roll the X-axis assembly onto the upper portion of the frame. So we're gonna grab our frame piece, and we're gonna set it actually upside down. And then we're gonna grab our X-axis assembly, and if you guys see the hot end here, we're just gonna set it upside down like this. And so the smooth parts are out, and I think this is correct. So there's some rollers here, and they're just simply gonna roll onto the channel from the top. So, and just like that, it rolls right on. So it might be a little confusing, but we're just doing everything upside down. And now when we flip it over, we can see that everything's normal, which our extruder assembly and all that is over there. as you guys can see, and this is where our lead screw will go through. And speaking of the lead screw, that's actually the next step. And so we're just simply gonna run it right into there. There's a brass bushing right here, and it just kind of screws down in there. Pretty much goes down by itself. So yeah, as you guys can see, that's step 2 there. So we're gonna need the Z-axis motor, which is this guy here, and we're simply just gonna set the lead screw right into it. And so now we just need to get a wrench to tighten this little set screw in the coupler, and that's gonna lock the lead screw in there where it doesn't move around. And there are 2 set screws. So. All right, so now we need to get the 2 bolts that secure the motor to the frame. So we're gonna need 2 M416. So it might be actually easier to tighten the motor to the frame first before doing the coupler. I'm probably making it a little bit harder for myself than it needs to be. But yeah, we got 1 bolt started, and now the other. And that's it. Now our X-axis is connected to the lead screw, and now we can control it with the lead screw up and down. So I'm gonna run it up just a bit. So yeah, that wasn't so hard, and you could probably lay it down where it's easier to work on, things like that. All right, so the next step is 3, and we're just gonna set the whole upper portion to the bottom portion of the printer and secure it. And we're gonna need 4 M520 bolts. So this part is actually quite simple. We have 2 holes here and 2 on the other side of the channel. So let's grab the gantry. And we're just simply gonna line up these holes with the bottom of the channel here on the gantry. Just like that. So, and obviously you want to point this the right way, so the hot end, you know, will be to the front and your motor's going to the back. So yeah, now we're just gonna grab our 5x20 bolt, start the other one. So there's not too much room under here, so I'm just gonna lean it over and snug them up. And we don't want to tighten this yet. I just snugged it, and the reason for that is because we want to do the other side first. Let's flip it around, and you guys can see how easy this printer moves because of its plastic feet, which could be actually kind of nice now that I'm thinking about it. If you do move your stuff around a lot, it does slide quite easy, but it does have enough friction where it, you know, just doesn't rattle around, I guess. So same thing on this side. We're just gonna start them up. I'm just gonna use the spool holder here to prop it up. So yeah, now we can go ahead and tighten this up pretty good. And now we're at the other side, and we're gonna tighten these up nice and snug. Again, don't over tighten them, but you know, make them pretty tight. And that's it. And now our gantry is connected to the base. All right, so for step 5, we're gonna be installing the idler bracket for the Z-axis rod and the spool holder. So the spool holder actually goes here on the left side in the corner. There's a couple holes, and it's already pre-built, so all we gotta do is just line it up like this. So we're gonna need the 416 bolts. I just realized I told you guys wrong. The M520s actually are for the spool holder, the bigger ones, and the smaller ones are for the pulley up to the Z-axis. So our spool holder's on, and you guys can see how it sits, and it's kind of on a 45-degree angle towards the extruder here, which I'm not sure how that's gonna work. I guess we'll see. So now we just need to go up and up to the very top here. So there is a couple threads that we're gonna mount this bracket to, and it does have a floating bearing. So it's just simply gonna sit over the lead screw like this. Then we're gonna grab the 416 bolts, line it up, and start it. So yeah, pretty simple process here. And that's it. And now our lead screw is pretty secure, but you guys can see it still can move around in there pretty easily. And the whole point of this bracket is when the Z-axis is all the way down, this is really long. You know, there's a tendency for it to maybe get caught up on something and then bending it. So this kind of protects it from, you know, being able to be bent too much, but still able to bend a little to have those fluctuations. All right, so that is the spool holder and the bracket. So looking at the manual, I realized we did step 5 instead of step 4, which was next, because it does go down and then up and then back down again. But in any case, it doesn't really matter. So here we're gonna go to step 4, and that is actually the bracings. And it comes with these 2 aluminum rods that are quite long. And if you guys can see, there's a bracket here and a bracket up here, and that's where they mount. So we are gonna need the M48 bolts. So on the ends of the rods, this is adjustable here. You can unscrew it or screw it in depending on the length. So let's go ahead and do this side so you guys can see. So we're just simply gonna grab our bolt and go through the mounting part, and then we're just gonna start it onto here. So we don't wanna tighten this up yet. We wanna kind of keep this loose so we can actually turn the bar to, you know, and go up or down, and we can adjust both sides. So now going down to the lower one, we can see that it's too short right now. So what we need to do is we need to unscrew the rod a little bit there and a little bit here until it gets close. Now what you don't want to do is you don't want to force this thing either one way or the other. You want to get it really close where this lines up and then just tighten it there, because if you force it, you're going to bend the top down or away. You want the top to be exactly where it's at. All right, so I'm really close now. I can go ahead and put my bolt in, and I shouldn't be forcing it at all. And also we can use this provided wrench, the smaller end of it, to tighten these nuts up where it locks it in. Same thing here on the top. All right, so now that this side's good, I'm gonna go ahead and do the other side and we'll go to the next step. So we've done step 5, now we're gonna go to step 6, and that's gonna be installing the screen and the Z-axis in-stop switch. So for the screen, we're gonna need the M5 6 bolts. And so the screen mounts here on the left side of the printer and it simply bolts into the channel. So yeah, just like that. So now we're gonna move here to the side, right over here, and you guys can see there's a little sticker here, and this is where our in-stop switch will go. So it already has the T-nut and the bolt going through it. So with the clicker going up, we're gonna insert the T-nut into the channel, and it looks like that the sticker here kind of gives you guidance on how far down to go, and it literally has a line there and you just line it up. And that should be close enough right here. So if we back up the bolt a bit and then tighten it back up, the T-nut should turn in the channel and lock in. So I'm gonna leave it right there. We can actually go ahead and check if that's okay by going down on the Z-axis. And when it clicks it, we can see how close our nozzle is to the bed, which on mine it looks pretty good. So just keep in mind that you can, adjust the whole thing up and down with the Z-axis switch, where it stops. So if you need it to stop lower, you can lower it down. And if it's, stopping way too low and hitting the bed, then just raise this up. Also guys, keep in mind there's still a glass build platform that goes on top of this. So, the gap has to be quite a decent size. All right, so it looks like we're getting closer to the end here, or we are basically. There's a step 7 and that's just plugging everything in. So while we're over here on the Z-axis switch, let's go ahead and plug in the Z. We can see there's a wire here that says Z on it, and we're simply just going to plug it into here. So there's also another wire coming out the back that says LCD on it, and that's for the screen. So that just simply plugs into the back of the screen. Actually guys, I just realized that the screen wiring should go behind the motor here underneath. It was definitely a stretch for it on this side, and now we can tuck it underneath in the channel here, and it looks really good. So maybe the Z wire actually needs to go under also. Yeah, for sure. There we go. That really cleans everything up a lot better. So yeah, going underneath here instead of on top. Now if we see this motor right here, there's a plug that needs to go here, and this is the Z motor. And on every cable it does label, what does what, so not too hard to figure out where everything goes. So let's keep going around. We have the heated bed that we need to plug in, and this is this wire here that comes out from the very back, and it just simply plugs right into here. Just like that. And the rest back here is already connected and good to go. So for the next part, we're gonna go actually right here in this area. I'm gonna raise it up. But you guys can see all these wires. So again, they're all labeled. We got E here, so E stands for extruder motor right here. So we're gonna plug that in. Then we got the X and stop switch and the X motor. And here we have the E again, but a smaller plug, and that's for the filament detector on the top here. So we got the filament detector, the extruder motor as E's, and then the X, larger plug for the motor, and then the smaller plug, which is the in-stop, actually is inside here, and we're gonna plug it in right there. That is basically everything, all the wiring to the printer. All right, so even though we're pretty much done putting it together, we still need to make sure everything is operating smoothly. So we're gonna check the travel of the bed, make sure the belt is centered on the pulleys or pretty close, and everything is smooth. Same thing for the X-axis here, and on mine, it's definitely not good. It's way too tight. I think the rollers are over tightened. So basically we're just checking everything, making sure that all of our rollers everywhere are decently adjusted. So there are eccentric nuts on the ends here, you can adjust these. And mine here on the hot end is extremely tight, so we need to loosen that up. And the eccentric nut for that is underneath. And again, the way you adjust it is, if you try to spin the roller and it's too tight, that means you need to loosen it up a bit. Okay, so I loosened it too much. Go back a little bit. I'm getting close. It looks like about right there. So you want to be able to easily spin the roller, but at the same time not have any wobble. So that looks like improved quite a bit there. It feels a lot more smoother. Also check your belt. Make sure everything is running good and true and nothing's rubbing, and if need to be adjusted. With this tightening pulley, you can actually kind of flex it a little bit down or a little bit up. Also wanted to mention that probably a good idea to go around and tighten all the frame bolts, because they do get loosened over time. It's just the nature of metal. Once it sits, it loosens up a bit. So especially on this Y-axis rail, you want to go back here and tighten all the bolts. But yeah, other than that, we are pretty much done with the assembly. Let's go ahead and install our build platform. So it is glass on the bottom, and then on the other side we have the perforated material. And the great thing about this kind of bed, when it does work well, is that whenever it heats up, the filament will stick to it. When the print's done and the bed cools off, it pops right off. So normally these work really well. So we got 4 clips here, and there is a protective layer on it we need to peel. And you want to only do this when you're pretty much done with everything, because you don't want to get this stuff oily or too many fingerprints on it, because it'll have a hard time sticking later. All right, so we're just gonna slide it in here, and then we're gonna use these clips on the front and the back of it to clamp it down to the aluminum part. And simple as that. Now we are finished. So for next part, let's take a closer look at all the details, and then we'll power it on, level the bed, and do our first print. All right, so looking here completely in the shot, we can see that it's quite a large printer, and the build volume is 300 by 300 by 400 tall. So I really like this size because, you know, this is very versatile for pretty much anybody. But do keep in mind that it is quite a large form factor overall. But as we go to the top, we can see that because the spool holder is not up there, we actually have pretty decent headroom if we do need to put it under something. And I think this is one of the big advantages to this printer, is these rods here, giving it extra stability, plus not having the spool holder. This thing should have pretty much non-existent vibrations as far as the gantry is concerned. So on the top here, it's pretty clean. You just have these brackets. This is a pretty small frame here, but it doesn't need to be big. So well constructed. I like the smooth look here. It's more modern and cleaner. So I flipped it around. Now we're looking at the back of it, and we can see where our lead screw here goes to the top with the bracket and the guide bearing. So going down, we see the extruder assembly, which the mechanism itself is all plastic, and a lot of times that's fine, but I would have liked to see metal, but we do have a pretty nice high quality spring here. This here is our filament detector, and it is quite close to the lead screw there. You guys can see that's where the filament goes in, right in here. I'm not sure how well that's going to work with the spool holder being right here. So the filament has to feed like that. So we got the extruder stepper motor underneath. Going this way, this is our X-axis motor and the in-stop switch that we plugged in. Going down, we have a flexible coupler with the Z-axis motor. So next to the motor here, Z-axis in-stop switch, where we can adjust it up and down. So going to the very back, we can see where the hotbed plugs in. So it is all nicely constructed and strain relieved. So no issues there. So the bed is heated, and that's the aluminum you see there. But if we go underneath the bed, we can see that it's not insulated, which is not a huge deal, but it probably will take a bit longer to heat. So we do have the 3 rollers underneath the bed that roll on the channel, which is nice. Also, we have nice quality springs here with decent sized knobs to compress them. So here we can see our Y rail, Y end-stop switch, the Y motor. We got our QR code here, the printer parameters, which are upside down, so I'm going to flip them around, and the back of the machine, which has these little nice patterns there. Very cool. And this is where we're going to plug in our power cord. It is fused, and we got an on and off switch here. So back at this side, we can see how the spool holder mounts here, and right underneath the spool holder we have the port for the printer to the computer with this USB, and also our micro SD card slot here, which by the way is, when looking at the printer, on the left side on the back. So let's check out this hot end real quick. Now, one thing I noticed right away is they're using a blue type of PTFE tubing, so maybe it's better quality, but everything's nicely zip tight, so it looks good. So we are using this kind of fan here for cooling, and normally it works okay. I prefer the axial kind of fans, but this is, I guess, okay. We'll see how well the cooling is. And looking underneath, we can see our heat block there. It's got a silicone sock. So yeah, it's a pretty small form factor here. It's got a tiny fan here. So overall, it looks pretty lightweight and should be good for faster printing. So here we have the bed that we just looked at, and it is a nice finish. Again, with that ultra base type of finish where it really grabs the print when it's hot and cuts it loose when it cools off. So we'll see how well this one works. Here in the front, this is our Y rail with the idler pulley here, and you can adjust it. There's 2 bolts on each side if you need to. You can see here on mine, it runs pretty much dead center, so that's nice to see. If you have to, you can adjust this back and forth to, you know, offset it whatever direction it needs to go. But yeah, the front of the printer looks pretty simple, and if we look underneath the printer there, we can see a cooling fan for the electronics right next to the power supply here. So we have these little legs here with the plastic feet, but one of the main attractions here is this touchscreen LCD, and it is quite large, and we have a sticker here warning us about the power supply. So if you haven't checked your voltage on your power supply, go ahead and do that. We'll go ahead and peel the sticker off. Well, there we go. A little bit of residue, but if you take the sticker and do this, it pulls it right off, or at least most of it. But yeah, we'll see how nice this thing is. It is a large size, so yeah guys, as you can see, it's a pretty well built printer, and I'm pretty excited to power it on and try it out. But before we do anything else, let's go ahead and lower our Z-axis and see where our hot end stops at. make sure it's not hitting the bed. And it actually is a bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and run these down because I haven't done it yet. And let's see what happens now. All right, so I heard the click and we got plenty of room. So we can go up from here since, you know, I pretty much lowered it as low as it goes almost. So you wanna check that before, you know, you power it on and start moving it around because, you know, you might scrape into the bed and then you're gonna have like a nasty scratch through the whole thing and whatnot else. All right, so let's grab this power cable. I'm gonna plug it in the back. Let's go ahead and power on the printer and see what happens. All right, so I can hear it boot up. The fans are running and everything seems to be working, but the screen is not coming on for some weird reason. Maybe I don't have it plugged in all the way. Okay, yeah, it got unplugged. There it goes. So I think it's confused at this point. I should probably restart it. Yeah, so make sure your screen's plugged in all the way, not like mine was there. Well, let's try that again. All right, so it's loading up. And there it goes. Looks like he boots up and everything is working. So let's go ahead and check out this pretty cool screen here that we have. So it is a touch screen and the verticalness of it is pretty nice. We got a lot of information here. So the font is still pretty small, interestingly enough. So up here it says home, so I'm guessing this is the home page. Okay, and if we click that little plus, it says about, and this is everything about the printer here. So apparently this thing had already 53 minutes of printing time. I'm guessing it was a quality control at the factory. So here we can see we have hot buttons. So we have the nozzle and the bed temperatures on the very top. Here we have file, which there's nothing there. So I guess they're not hot buttons, they're just immediate information that's available right now. So it looks like this main screen here is the screen that is also used for printing. Because we have the time, the file, the height, the progress, and the pause and the cancel right here on the front. But on the bottom here is where our hot buttons are. So we got home, tune, move, utilities, and print. So let's go to tune. Here we can see we can adjust the nozzle temperature, the bed temperature, the fan speed, the feed rate, and the flow rate. And then we got move, and this is where we can move all our axes separately, and we can choose the increments and also disable our motors here. So if your motors are locked, you can release them or also lock them. That's interesting. And there is a main home button right here. All right, well, that's pretty cool. Let's go to utilities. So here we can control filament like unloading and loading, and then we got leveling. So we're gonna definitely do that. And the last button here is print. Here we can read the files, which, you know, we don't have anything in there right now. All right, so let's go to move. Well, actually, no, utilities. And the thing we're gonna do first is we're gonna home it. And the reason we do that first is we wanna make sure everything is working. All the in-stop switch and all the motors. So I'm gonna click on home. It's gonna ask us if we wanna home it, yes. And there it goes. Okay, so it looks like the X is working. The Y is working, and now the Z. Okay, so the Z is good too. So now that we know all the motors work, let's go ahead and go to tune, and we'll preheat the nozzle to 210, let's say. Well, let's go to 220. Go back and go to heated bed, and we'll do heated bed at 60 degrees. So now they're preheating. Let's go back to our utilities and go ahead and level our bed. And we want everything to preheat and get hot before we level because things expand as they get hot. So as we're waiting, we can go ahead and start the leveling process. So we're going to click on level, and here it gives us the 5 points, the 4 corners in the middle. And so this is merely an assistant and not an actual complete bed leveling. So what it's going to do is going to take you to the corner, and then you have to adjust it manually. And so what you're going to need is some kind of sheet of paper. So I'm just going to use this thank you letter. And on the screen here, I'm going to click on 1, and that should go to our first corner. All right, so now we're just going to manually adjust with the knobs going up and down. Now on the first one, you don't want to go too high, especially if you're, you know, far away. And the reason for that is because when you adjust the other ones, this one's going to be way too close and it's going to scratch the bed. So keep this one quite a bit lower. Then let's go to 2. This one we can do a little closer now. Again, on the first pass, don't be very accurate, just leave a little space. So let's go to 3 now, and 4. So now that we got the bed pretty close, we can go ahead and go around at least 2 or 3 more times, maybe even more if needed. So yeah guys, this is my 4th pass here. I keep adjusting it incrementally here and there, but it's already pretty much close enough. And you want to, you know, take your time and do this because this is probably one of the most important parts about 3D printing is getting your bed really level. So like right now, this is a little tighter than I want it. It's literally like an 1/8 of a turn. So, and the more you go around, the, you know, flatter you get it. But I'm really close right now, pretty much just kind of micro adjusting. And because this is a glass bed, it's going to be pretty consistent throughout the whole sheet. So yeah, we're pretty much perfect now. So once you get all the 4 corners really close, you want to go to the middle, which is 5 here. the center, and here we can see how close or far away we are. So your bed should be hot at this point, and mine looks to be pretty much perfect. Now if you need to adjust it up or down just a tiny bit, you can go on every knob and, you know, loosen it or tighten it all the same. Let's say I want to loosen it just a bit, so I'll go to every knob and loosen the same amounts, and that'll bring the whole platform up just a tiny bit on all the corners at the same time. So yeah, I'm pretty happy right there, and that's how you do the bed leveling. Not too hard, just take your time, and the assistant here helps a lot with the process. All right, so for next part we need to put in some filament. I guess let's go ahead and try to use this coil of purple or pink. And I'm not sure what this is going to be enough for because there's not very much of it. We're going to try to use it here. Let's move this here so you guys can see. But yeah, we have the spool holder, which a spool will go there. And then we're going to go through the filament detector and then push our filament through all the way through the tube until it comes out the hot end. So I'm just going to manually push it through. And it looks like we had some black in there from the factory. You can go into assistant and, you know, do it through there, but it's much easier just to do it by hand, honestly. Let's raise this up a bit. Yeah, we can see that the purple is coming out. So let's go ahead and grab our micro SD card that was included, and we do get a little USB reader. So I'm not sure exactly the size, but it's unmarked. I'm hoping there's some files in there. So it does go back there, plug it in. So let's go ahead and see what we have on the card. So we're gonna click on print, files, and sure enough, there's quite a few things on here. So we got a whistle, a vase, something else, a cube, a boat, and that is it. So we do have quite a few files to print. Not sure which one I should start with. I'm guessing a whistle since it's first. Hopefully that's enough filament we got there. So let's just go with that. I'm gonna click on whistle. It's gonna ask me here to open it. I'm gonna click open, start printing, yes. And there it goes, and looks like that's our start menu there. So we're gonna explore this in a second. Let's go ahead and see what the printer's doing. Looks like it is homing. And there it goes, our first layer. So it does look like we're a little high. Well, actually maybe not. Well, maybe it's perfect. So yeah, it looks good. So as we're printing, we can see that we pretty much kept the whole home screen the way it is. It's just now we have more parameters. So the file name, the time that's passed since we started, the height, and the progress bar, which is 0% right now. So here we have a pause and a cancel button, stop. And then we have 3 hot buttons on the bottom. So we got home, tune, and filament. So we're on home right now. If we go to tune, we'll go to the tuning menu, so we can change the nozzle temperature, the bed temperature, the fan speed, the feed rate, and the flow rate. So pretty good adjustments here. So let's see if we wanted to change this. Okay, so yeah, you can just adjust it from here. And you can choose an increment of 1 or 10. We'll just go 105. Keep it at that. And the bed is at 60 right now. So if we click on filament, that's probably going to change out the filament. Yeah, so we're going to cancel that. So, you know, if you're running out of filament or you want to just change colors or whatever types, you can do that there. Kind of stop and guide you through the change and then continue where it left off. But yeah, overall pretty good menu here. Now one thing that I don't see, wish it had, was the Z-axis baby steps offsets where you can, you know, go up and down as it's printing. And I don't see that we have that. Can't do anything here. This is just information. And then these are our options down here. But that's okay, because technically if you have your bed leveled, it should be good every time. And we should be pretty consistent with the first layer going down. Also guys, before I forget, the printer is actually running really quiet. The only thing I can really hear is just fan noise. So it looks like we do have silent stepper drivers in here. I'm gonna bring my microphone in so you guys can hear it. So yeah, quite a quiet printer overall. Alright, so we're printing away. We have 65% progress, and it's only been 36 minutes. And this is what we have so far, so it looks like it's working. And the print quality looks pretty good. We'll take a closer look once it's done. And the good part is there's plenty of filament. Now, one thing I did want to mention is, since it's doing retractions right now, the extruder stepper motor, it's, you know, you can hear it. So it's not crazy loud, but you know, it does make the little retraction stepper motor sound. So yeah, I wish they would have put silent on everything, but they for some reason left out the extruder, which is quite important for retractions. But either way, the printer overall is pretty quiet. Alright, so our print is done, and you can see on the screen there it says finish, and it only took 50 minutes. So let's push OK, and just goes back to the main menu. So it looks like we got a whistle. So the bed is actually still hot. Let's see if this thing will come off. I guess if I had some patience, I would wait, but look at that. I went ahead and took it off. So let's check out this whistle here. It is on a raft, and the raft pops off pretty good. And overall, it actually looks nice. The layers seem to be laying down good. The walls look very reasonably good too. So yeah, I would say we got a really good start here with this whistle. So let's see if it actually works. I'm going to blow it off camera. All right, well, that's good to see. So we printed a part, and not just any part, actually a useful part. And if you give this to your kids, I'm sure they'll take advantage of it. But I'm going to go ahead and print whatever else is on the SD card, and we'll check those out. Alright, so I decided to go ahead and print everything that was on the SD card, and this is all of the prints here. So after the whistle, we printed this thing, which is a fan duct, I guess a replacement for the fan here, and it turned out really good overall. So you do have a file, print another fan duct if you wanted to. And I don't know how much you guys can see, but the layers are sitting pretty well. So after the fan duct, there was also this little square thing, and I guess this is supposed to be like a calibration thing, and you can kind of see how it does. But we're gonna do our own cube here in a second, and we'll check out how accurate it is. Now the vase here took forever to print, and when I say forever, I mean like 11 hours or something, but it's quite large, so this is a very reasonable time. And look how well it turned out. So it's kind of nice to see this pretty cool looking vase. I don't think I've ever printed anything like this, and it's a strong vase that you can use, and I'm pretty sure it's going to hold water too. So, and the complex patterns make it quite interesting for sure. And there was also a benchy as one of the files, and I haven't pulled it off the bed yet. Let's see how easy it'll come off. Oh wow, it didn't even pop or anything. So it literally printed and then just released completely, which is quite impressive. And looks like the build plate here is working very well, and every print has been sticking and releasing very easily. So let's take a closer look at this benchy. It is on a raft. Let's see if we can pop that off. Look at that, perfect. Pretty clean bottom with no markings of any kind. So if we look at the print quality itself, it looks really nice. So this did print like this. So the y-axis is actually going this way, and the x this way. Not that we can see anything on this thing anyway because it's yellow, but yeah, overall it looks really good. I don't really see any issues here. And we are going to print our own benchy in black, where we can really see how the layers go down. So I have to say, a great start for the LK5 Pro here. There's no issues whatsoever. Everything's working, and the prints are coming out really nice. So I'm going to go ahead and print that cube and benchy, and we'll take a closer look. So as we're printing here, I wanted to show you guys that the spool holder actually works out pretty well for the 45-degree angle here to the detector. So it's not really rubbing on anything. If it is, it's barely touching that wall there. But yeah, it seems to work pretty well. At first I thought it might be a problem, but yeah, no issues whatsoever, seems like, with the spool holder being like that. So our calibration cube is on the way. Alright, so our calibration cube and the benchy are finished. So let's take a closer look at the calibration cube. And right off the bat, guys, I'm really impressed with this printer. So I couldn't really see with the other prints, but now looking at the cube here, we can really see how the layers are setting. So this is the x-axis here. So very minimal vibrations, and layer bonding is really good. And no ghosting almost, not that I can really see. So here we have the y. Also very minimal vibrations, practically no ghosting, and the layers are really uniform. Very impressive. So this is the X wall and the Y wall. Our bottom, and it is straight to the bed, and the top. So it appears to be very accurate. But let's go ahead and confirm that with these calipers. So let's do the X first, and sure enough, it's almost perfect. Should be 20 millimeters. And the Y, so yeah, extremely accurate. Let's try the Z, also very close. So yeah, this is really impressive. to say the least, and very accurate also. So this printer is very capable, as you guys can see in this cube. Now we also printed a benchy, and it's still stuck onto the bed, and the bed is slightly warm. Should come off quite easy. Let's try. Look at that. And we did print it straight to the bed, so yeah, you guys can see that's pretty impressive. And there's no lifting or anything strange. So the benchy is equally impressive, but we did have a little bit of stringy, you guys can see there. And we just need to up the retraction in the slicer. I did forget to mention that the benchy and the calibration cube were sliced at 0.2 millimeter layer height at 50 millimeters a second print speed, and the retraction was 6.5 millimeters at 25 millimeter speed. So I need to probably up that to 7.5 to get the stringing to go away. And the temperature was 200 degrees, so yeah. So there is a little bit of ringing or vibrations here. Not bad at all. This is definitely above average. And you know, I've seen a lot of printers print different benchies. This one is definitely on the better than average scale for sure. So on the arches here, we can see our cooling is reasonably good, and the hangovers are pretty well, so I guess that cooling fan is working quite good. Our box does have that little slit in it. Sometimes that indicates good precision, and I think this printer definitely has it. The bottom straight to the build platform stuck very well and then just popped off. So yeah, the walls look great, and then the Y wall also looks really good. The top, the chimney, I don't know guys, I'm pretty impressed with this LK5 Pro. I think it deserves the Pro name because it's actually putting out some pretty pro prints, with a lot of machines wanting to be pro. And overall, I do think the Pro name has, you know, been overused. But in any case, I'm really happy with the performance of this printer, especially not having to do any kinds of adjustments really, just checking the rollers and, you know, making sure everything's tight, and it prints this well out of the box. So I'm going to go ahead and print a few more other things, and we'll take a look at that, and then I'll summarize on what I think about this printer. Alright guys, so these are all the prints that we printed on the LK5 Pro. So overall, I have to say this machine is pretty great for what it is. We do have to remember these are budget printers, more intended for hobbies and things like that. But with that said, I did print a few things here, so let's go ahead and start with this little frog. So I like printing this frog because it's quite detailed, and also gives us some good idea of how the layers sit, plus you can see the overhang underneath. Now his arm did kind of, I guess, break off, or I don't know exactly what happened, but if we look here underneath the chin, we can see how nice and straight that is, and not all printers can do it this good. Now I did have some retraction problems, and that's one thing that I kind of did have an issue with, and I had to up it as I went because I realized it was not enough for what I had. But yeah, as you guys can see, pretty solid print, and it looks pretty good. Now all these prints I printed in the same specs I did the calibration cube and the benchy. So after that, I did print this little piggy here, and this is supposed to be like a piggy bank, and it's just miniaturized. It does have a hole here that caps. But yeah, this turned out okay. There is some layering a little bit. It looks like under extrusion maybe, and it did get a little bit more severe here towards the top. So yeah, it didn't turn out as good as I would hope, but nevertheless not terrible either. And I still did have retraction problems, so this is why we have all this blobbing here everywhere. Now another thing I wanted to mention is that it's been really humid here where I live, and a lot of rain, so I think some of my filament got contaminated with moisture, and this one here looks like was one of them, because when it started printing I heard all kinds of little pops and things like that. So I did start to dry them off as I went. Now one thing I do like to print with every review is this bearing, and this basically shows us if the printer's got good accuracy, meaning that the tolerances are good enough for, you know, to have function, kind of like this bearing here. There is a little bit of retraction hairs in there where it didn't retract enough, so that could cause us a little bit of an issue. But let's see if this thing will actually spin up. So I'm going to go ahead and do it with my hand, and it's not doing it, but I do have an Allen wrench. Insert it and see if we can spin it with that. So let's go ahead and try it out. Oh, look at that, it's actually going for it. Nevertheless, it did spin up, and now spins by hand. So not perfect obviously, but still we can see that, you know, it's pretty capable. And also looking at our walls here on this print, they look pretty good. So naturally I had to print the spaceship and the astronauts, one of my two favorite things I guess to print. But I also printed a little octopus, and you guys can see it down there, and he's actually still stuck to the bed. So that was actually the last thing I printed. So I'm pretty curious how well this thing's gonna come off. So let's try it out, and look at that, it just literally breaks off. No issues. That's pretty amazing. And to be honest, the bed has been performing extremely well with this printer. Now this print didn't go completely 100% perfect because we did have a few of them that popped off as it was printing. We can see the aftermath here. Caused a little bit of jamming here and there. But still, it was able to finish and it looks great overall. And we can see how the layers sit here on the head part. Very nice. And this is a pretty hard print to print because there's a lot of pieces that have to, you know, combine, and they do move around also. So yeah, not only does the bed have to hold them well, but the printer has to, you know, put the layers down reasonably well. And if you guys look at the little hands, you can kind of see that there's still a little blobs here and there from the retraction. And if there's any negative about this printer that I found, it's the retraction. So this was bumped up all the way to 9 millimeters and it's still not retracting completely like it needs to. So I did check the tubing and everything else. Everything's tight. So something about the heat block or the nozzle is just not retracting it like it needs to be, and it seeps out just a bit. And I think if I went to 10 millimeters, it probably would solve pretty much everything. But that's already, you know, going pretty high. So the astronaut, on the other hand, turned out very nice. And you guys can see the reflections. I mean, this thing just looks really smooth. So there is a little bit of vibrations. You can kind of see it in his back there. But yeah, overall, very solid, beautiful print. So yeah, you guys can see this printer is very capable of putting the layers down nicely. And cooling is decent. We can see here under his hands that it's not droopy. So, and by the way, this is all the astronaut has to grab on. It's very small, and the bed was able to hold it, you know, without it popping off. So now for this last print, we have the spaceship, and this is printed in spiralized mode, which is basically one layer all the way around to the top. There's a few layers on the bottom for, you know, sticking. So we can see the bottom looks pretty good. You guys can see the reflections. Pretty nice. So layers go down really nice in spiralized mode. As we go up here, let's check out these windows. Usually this is where we're going to see vibrations and things like that, especially around the G. And there is a little bit, but it's not severe. And this window is pretty clean here. Yeah, it looks great overall. But there was a small issue, and as we go up, we can see it here. We have under extrusion, and what happened here was the filament was getting caught up on a frame and was kind of snagging it. And so even though it was able to finish, it's all under extruded. You guys can see here a little closer, but yeah. But still did a great job. Didn't melt any of this because this is one layer, and we even got the ball on the top. And it also printed out, and there was no melting at all. So yeah, overall I would say, guys, this is a pretty great printer, especially if you're starting out and you want a large format. The LK5 Pro here has all the right stuff. Again, very impressed with the bed. Out of all these prints we printed here, every print stuck very well and popped off after it was done. I like how they use these braces here to stiffen up the gantry, and I think this helps it a lot with the print quality. We got all the modern features like filament detection, power loss resume, really nice large touchscreen display. And one of the great parts is it is 300 by 300 by 400 of volume, so that gives you a lot of flexibility to print any kind of projects. So yeah, that's a very good competitor in this space for this size printers. All right, guys, well, hopefully you enjoyed this video and you found it useful. If you did, then hit that like button. If you want to get this printer for yourself, I'll have some links in the description, so check that out. And if you enjoy videos like this, I do a lot of 3D printing reviews, so check out my pretty long playlist of printers I reviewed. And as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.